Hey guys, Brother Andrew here. In this tutorial, I'm going to walk you through how to get started with our Casino Challenge storyline game. So I've already downloaded and opened the file, and this game was originally created in Storyline 1, so if you're using Storyline 2, it's going to give you an option to upgrade it. So go ahead and do that, and it'll pop up with this screen that has the 3 slides. Now for this game to work properly, you're going to have to import all 3 of those. So I'll select all of those and click Import, and that'll pop them into your storyline project. Now this game is a little different from our other storyline games in that it's a drag and drop quiz. It's still a quiz game and it's still linear, so you still have the option for 20 quiz questions. You can modify that as you need to, but there's a drag and drop element to the game, and I'm going to show you how to modify that. So if we click the first slide in the game, which is the introduction slide, and we go to the right or the left of the stage, there's some red text that will tell you what variables you need to modify. So there's a number of questions variable that will set the number of questions. You can have up to 20. You can modify the points per question, the passing percentage, and there's a variable called SCORM that will send your score to SCORM if you're using an LMS. On the right hand side in the slide triggers panel is where you set those variables. So if I wanted to change the default number of questions from 5 to 10, I'll put that right there. If I wanted my passing percentage to be 100%, I would change that right here. And if I wanted to send the score to SCORM, I would change it from false to true. Alright, so that's how you set the intro variables for the game. And on that intro slide as well, there's a layer called instruction, and that's where you'll set the instruction text for the learner before they start the game. Alright, now the majority of the game is located on the second slide in the timeline, the quiz slide. This is where you're going to set the variables for all of your questions. This is where you'll choose the actual content that's going to be in there. So on the base layer of the quiz slide, if we navigate to the left side of the stage again, there's some instruction text that will tell you what variables you need to modify in order to change the questions and the answers. But before we get into that, I'm going to preview this just to show you how the game is supposed to run. Alright, so I'll click continue there, and that opens up the instructions layer of the intro slide. If we click start, that will begin our game. Alright, so you can see here how it is a little different from our other storyline games. So there are 2 options on the right side, an option 1 and an option 2, and there's going to be a playing card that will contain the question text, and the learner will drag and drop that card to either one of the options, click submit. Remediation text will pop up, and they can move linearly through the game that way. Now, if you notice, the second question actually had a different card type than the first one did. And that's because there are 4 different options for questions that correspond to the 4 different suits of playing cards. And I'll go ahead and show you how to modify those right now. I'll close this, and I'll undock this slide layer so we can see all of those. Alright, now each question has 4 slide layers that correspond to it. There's going to be a set variable layer, which is where you'll set most of the variables for the question. The question layer, which contains the question text that you can modify on the stage. A correct feedback and an incorrect feedback. Alright, so if we go to the question 1 set variable layer and go to the triggers panel, we can see that there's an option to choose, or there's a trigger to choose which question option you'd like to have. So if you remember when we published, there was an option 1 and an option 2. This is where you'll choose which option is correct. So say we just want to change that to option 2. And then right here is where you will set the text that's going to be on the playing card. If we move to the question layer, there's a trigger that says show layer game 1 when the timeline starts. Now if we go back to the slide layers panel and scroll all the way to the top, we can see that there are 4 different game layers that correspond to the 4 suits of cards. So if I wanted to modify the text that was going to be shown on the game 1 layer, I can come over here and say I wanted this to be a true or false question. I'd modify that here. And say for the second option, I want the 2 options to be red or blue. Maybe I want the card text to be an item that's going to be either red or blue, and they have to drag and drop it into the correct spot. And I can do the same for game 3 or game 4. You can have just one game option if you want, or you can have all 4. That's up to you. So if I scroll back down to the question 1 layer, I can set the game layer that's going to be shown in the triggers panel. So right now it's showing game 1, which is going to be that true or false question. If I wanted to change it to the red and blue question, I can change that to game 2 right here. And to change the question text, I go back to the question 1 set variable. And if I'm going to change the label that's on the card, say I want to change this to the sky. Since the sky is blue, they can drag that to either red or blue. And I do the same thing on question 2. So I go to question 2 set variable and say I want this to be the true or false option. So I'll actually go to the question 2 game layer and change this from game 2 to game 1, which is the true or false game. And then back here, I can come to card label 2 and change it to a true or false question, which would be the sky is blue. And then I'll change that from option 2 to option 1. And I want to change question 1. Oh, that's already option 2, so that's perfect. All right, now if I preview this slide, my question text and the correct answers, the drop zones, should be populated with the text that I put in the variables. Okay, so right here we can see that the second game layer popped up because that's what I chose to be displayed on question 1. And the text that I inputted for the card label populated as well. So if I drag the sky to blue, click submit, that's correct. Correct feedback popped up, click continue. And now the true or false game layer popped up and the card label changed to what I specified on the question 2 set variables layer. If I drag that to true, click submit, that's also correct. So that's how you modify the actual game in the triggers in the game. If I want to change what shows up on the results page, I can come to the third side, which is the results slide, and there are 2 layers on here. There's a pass layer and a fail layer. You can modify the text that shows up if they pass or fail, and again that's controlled by the passing percentage variable that you changed on the first slide. Alright, so that's how you get started editing and customizing our Storyline Casino Challenge game.